Gen Alpha is the generation that is widely presented as being completely addicted to screens, spending most of their childhood in front of an iPad, watching child-unfriendly and brain-rotting content for hours at a time, every single day, having massive behavioral issues and being unable to read and write, with a staggering mental health crisis despite being barely able to form coherent sentences. This generation is doomed. And at the core of the suffering and the cause for all of this is one thing that we fear the most, one generation that is destroying everything. Millennials, the generation that destroyed marriage, Airbnb, holidays and mayonnaise, have now come to destroy the most precious thing in society: children. At least that's what TikTok in the internet would have you believe. And while I definitely agree that there are examples of this actually happening, I don't think the full story is being presented here. Because you see, one of the major criticisms is how addicted they are to their iPads, with Gen Alpha spending a vast majority of their free time in front of screens by the age of 8, with an average of 6 hours of daily screen time by that age. And we know that students who spend more time in front of screens are more likely to be depressed, anxious, have problems with attention, anger, frustration, and generally have a lower quality of life than those who do not. They are less physically active and have more problems with socialization. And these kids, they stand no chance. We live in a world designed to make them addicted to their phones, to social media. We have personalized artificial intelligence and machine learning algorithms designed to make you watching for as long as humanly possible, constantly improving, making thousands of changes every single day, with one simple purpose: to make you addicted and to bombard you with as much advertising as humanly possible. And on top of that, the creators, they're doing exactly the same, reviewing their metrics and changing content to do the same, to make you have that feeling of, I can't miss the next upload. I just have to watch it. Adding more dopamine-inducing high-speed editing that just makes you feel like you're going crazy, resulting in an actual physical and chemical addiction. Your brain is literally rewarding you with dopamine for each like, each scroll, and each mention. We have created the perfect slot machine for people to be addicted to. And they are, with over 50% of teenagers in the US spending on average 4.8 hours alone on social media every single day, spending most of that time on YouTube and TikTok. But that is not a new phenomenon, and older generations aren't really much better in this regard, because if we take into account all screens like watching TV, video games, social media, working in front of a screen, we can easily see that we spend just as much time in front of screens as they do, with an average screen time only increasing by 18 minutes in the past 10 years, which I was shocked by because it just didn't seem right. I feel like we are spending so much time in front of our phones than we used to. And that's the thing, we're not really spending much more time in front of screens, we're just doing it differently. We no longer spend that much time watching TV or watching a Netflix series, but being glued to our phones, watching TikTok or YouTube Shorts, being massively overstimulated every single day for hours at a time, because our dopamine-addicted brain just wants another scroll, another TikTok, another video, and all of that is making us more depressed, more anxious and more lonely. We spend more time in front of screens, less time in nature, less time talking to one another and being social, less time relaxing and just being alive. And I, for one, hate it. I really do. I think it's awful how our world is built to be so reliant on these evil devices. Most of our learning, communication, entertainment, work, all critical aspects of life are so dependent on this tiny thing that knows more about you than you know about yourself. It is quite depressing. But there is an interesting concept introduced by Richard Louv in his 2005 book which explores the idea of nature-deficient disorder, and I feel that many of us struggle to it. It is a concept that expands on research suggesting that direct exposure to nature has a range of positive health benefits. And I know, it's shocking. Who could have thought that spending time in woods, going for a walk, socializing, or just exercising outside reduces your stress level, makes you clear-headed and makes you happier? But as it happens, screens do the exact opposite. They make you more depressed, more anxious, have sleeping problems due to artificial light, issues in concentrating, and generally have a lower quality of life. And I think that many adults struggle with this. They spend time in the office looking at a screen for 8 hours a day, then come home to watch another screen while playing on a smaller screen in the same time, which I'll admit it, I've caught myself many times doing instead of actually letting my brain calm down after a busy workday. And I do love the positivity of Gen Z, who vouch to not allow their children as much screen time because they are aware of the negative effects of these addictions.
Gen Z, please, when we are older, don't give your kids iPads.
But with Gen Z, as much as with Millennials, there has to be some awareness. The irony of preaching limited screen time on TikTok by a generation that spends 4.8 hours on social media every single day is definitely lost here. And before you say, okay boomer, the other generations aren't really immune to this. The vast majority of millennial parents that I know are aware of these dangers and themselves vouch to not allow as much screen time to their kids. But as usual, life gets in the way. And I feel that many of us are addicted, but are completely unaware of it. And in times where the amount of families with both parents working has now gone to over 50%, and single parent households is reaching 23%, raising children is now more difficult than ever. That's why more and more parents are using technology as a babysitter to help them navigate these tough times. And to be clear, not all screen time is bad. I mean, children learn interactively, and there are few better ways to do this than through use of technology. There are great things out there that children can learn to expand their knowledge and to learn. But in the same time, there is some awful content just freely available on the internet. Even YouTube Kids, I mean the platform that has been specifically designed for children as young as 4, has been part of many controversies. Like the infamous Elsagate scandal, with videos showing disturbing subliminal messages of violent or sexual nature. With many of those still available today, parents have to be really careful what these kids are watching. And with YouTube dominating as the most popular hobby amongst children, with 40% of kids spending up to 2 hours a day on this platform, it isn't difficult for them to be raised by the worst content and by the lowest in society, showing them awful values like gambling and behaviors that are completely unacceptable by the rest of society. But in the same time, adults aren't really that much different, watching just as much brain-rotting reality shows with the Kardashians or many OnlyFans models setting the moral values that many people use today. The parallels are actually quite massive. For example, when we look at the fastest growing channels on YouTube in the past 30 days, you can notice that the brain rot is far more popular than the alternative, with the vast majority being Mr. Beast clones or just an endless amount of shorts channels focusing on just brain rotting content, like this. Or
got the new
this.
Apple Vision Pro! Whoa, cool! What can you see? Wow, I'm playing Roblox!
And that's why it's so critical for us, the adults, to help them navigate this environment. But of course, that doesn't really mean what many parents are doing, making your children into content. Whether that's vlogging families, child influencers, or what's called sharenting, which refers to parents oversharing sensitive information about their children online, all of those are disturbing. Exploiting your children for views is an awful practice, regardless of justification, which, aside from the typical dangers of children using social media, it adds additional risks to these kids, like additional insecurity, unnecessary pressure, or even danger of identity fraud, or likeliness of being a target by online predators. All avoidable things, which parents risk for the sake of few likes. And all of that is having a substantial effect on their mental health, which across the last many years we've seen in a constant decline, with the pandemic, constant wars, and social media overtaking our lives. The mental health of the general population is not getting any better, with the data not only showing a decline with the younger generation, but also with the generations heading into their 40s and 50s, breaking an old trend that mental health of young people usually improves over time. With now more than 21.6% of US adults receiving mental health treatment, an increase by 2.4% in just 2 years, and 18.9% of children receiving such treatment as well. Things are not looking good, especially as many specified that they're not getting such treatment because of lack of money. It is clear that people are struggling, and have been for a long time. And young generations are being more affected by this than ever, with 36.2% of Gen Zs and 29.4% of Millennials experiencing mental health conditions. The next generation, the Generation Alpha, will not look any better in this regard. And you see, that's why I am a bit annoyed with all of those news articles and TikTokers criticizing children for having all of those problems, as they are effectively projecting the issues that we are all struggling with onto these poor kids, as if somehow they're at fault. I mean, they are children and their ability to self-manage is really poor in comparison to our own. So if we can't deal with those issues ourselves, how do we expect these kids to do that? Anyway, that's all I wanted to share. I hope you've enjoyed my somewhat organized ramblings. Remember to subscribe. Peace out.